Hello everyone and welcome along to a very special edition of The Final Whistle. We are of course looking ahead to the 2022 Singapore Premier League season. I'm Ziaul Raushan and we're delighted to have your company today. We've been starved of local football since that momentous semi-final defeat in the AFF Suzuki Cup to Indonesia. And of course that was before the Lion City Sailors won the title at a canter in 2021 to cap off a marvellous 2021 season. Plenty has changed since in the way of rule changes as well as incoming transfers. So this is your show to get you geared up for the new year ahead. And for that, we've assembled a panel of very familiar faces, starting with local football journalists, and many are calling him the Fabrizio Romano of Singapore football. Deepan Raj Ganesan joins us. Deepan, good to have you with us.
Good to be here.
Moving on, we've got ex-footballer and the man who's affectionately known as the face of the Singapore Premier League, Rish Roshan Rai on the show. Rosh, good to have your company.
Good to be here. I don't like that face stuff and voice stuff, voice of this, voice of that, face of this, face of that, because I think football has many faces, many voices.
Okay, humble as ever. We'll have more of that. Beside him, of course, is football Asian and a man who's lined his pockets quite well, I think, in this off-season with the number of incoming transfers. Khairul Ashraf, thank you for your company today.
Welcome.
And alongside him is the former head coach of Balestier Khalsa and more recently the ex-assistant coach at Geylang International, Kide Kamis. Kide, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Welcome, gentlemen. There's no time for pleasantries because there's plenty of stuff to get stuck into, starting with the rule changes, shall we? It's about the under-23 rule. I mean, prior to this, there was a mandatory rule to play three under-23 players from the start. That's, of course, changed for the 2022 season. There needs to be just one under-23 player from the start. Deepan, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it's good for the league. I think last season I chimed in a lot of times to say that this rule has to go. I think in the second half of the last season, second half of the matches last season, we saw that the quality went up when some of the under-23 boys went out of the pitch. And I think this is something that probably the FAS committee realised. I think definitely it's a good thing for the league because I think the level of competition will go up. I think the integrity of the league will be there as well. So I'm all for the change. I'm really happy to see that this change has come in. So I'm looking forward to even higher quality matches from the start this time around.
I think most of us will agree that the quality of the league will go up. But in terms of a player perspective, these under-23 players, they were getting to start. Rosh, coming to you on this, do you think it's going to then hamper the progress of these under-23 players?
Perhaps. I mean, they were getting minutes last season, some of them significant minutes, significant game time. But I don't think a professional league should be a league where you are developing players and giving them game time for the sake of it. So yeah, there is going to be an impact and an effect there. I'm with Deepan in terms of what he said about I think people getting game time on merit and also affecting the quality of the league. I think it's good that we're going to see stronger teams now potentially, and yeah, look, I think it's a good move going forward.
Just very quickly, Khairul, you speak to a lot of players, whether they are under 23 or over 23. What's the word on the ground? How are the players feeling about this change?
I think they are very excited about this, and also I think it also bodes well because as sad as it sounds, that there are some good players who are not having contracts this year. So it means that there is quality there within the 8 teams, right? And then they lessen the under-23 players that they've signed. And I think if the plans of the under-23 league goes on, then there's a correct platform where the under-23 players develop. And then hopefully then we can have our under-19, 17s, 15s and 14, whatever not that's being developed, and which can sustain our leagues in the next 10, 15 years.
Fair enough. And Kide, coming to you finally, as a coach or former coach, what are your thoughts on selection-wise? How does that play into coaches' minds?
I think usually when we have the 3 under-23 rulings, we intend to plan for 2 halves, where we are just going to take out the under-23 players during half time for the second half. And it's a forced move. And sometimes we don't even have quality under-23 players to play from the start. Right? So it affects the quality of the league, the match. It affects the quality of the league as a whole. And the players are being forced to play, right? So on the other side, the players who are good enough but older than under-23 are not being given a chance, which I think now is a good thing. It's a good move for those players as well.
It does seem overwhelmingly positive, the feedback in the room, right, about the under-23 rule. Moving on quickly to the next rule change that might catch you by surprise, but it was uncovered by our man Deepan here as well. I say uncovered because he put it out into Twitter. Albirex need to field just one under-23 player in the starting 11. This, of course, is a downgrade from 3.
They had 2 who had to start, but not kept by age. So any age, but 2 local boys who had to start the last 2 seasons. So for me, I think to answer your question, you look at Albrechts. I think first and foremost, I thought I was quite emotional in the change in the sense where I thought it was a bad move and all. But you take a step back, you analyze it. I think it's a good one for the league. I think when you implement a rule, I think the rule has to be shared across all the clubs in the league. And we weren't always doing that in the past few seasons. There was always one rule for DPMM, one rule for Albrechts, one rule for the other clubs. So I think it's good to align all these clubs with one rule. I think it'll be good for the competition in the league. I think a stronger Albrechts can push the Sailors further. You've got to be honest, there's probably 1 or 2 clubs that can push Sailors, and Albrechts is definitely one of them. So I think a stronger Albrechts will push Sailors, and therefore will be a better league, I think.
I'm actually quite upset that Deepan took the first question because I wanted to come with him as a harder question. But I'm going to have to throw the harder question to one of you. Why has that rule been almost swept under the carpet? Why wasn't it mentioned from the get-go when the rule changes were mentioned? Whoever's brave enough can take that.
I don't know if it's about being brave enough, but I don't know if what we answer about that will be speculation, right? Because we're not in the meetings amongst the chairmen, we're not in the rooms with the FAS people who are making this decision. So whatever their reasoning behind it to do it, we won't know. What we can do is we can only speculate about why they made those changes or why they didn't make those changes. What I can answer, what I can give you my opinion on is the fact that it looks to me like the rule change will help improve the overall quality of the league, as Deepan said. So, but what he said, I completely agree with. Again, it's just about increasing the level of competitiveness and making sure there's good fight across the teams in the competition.
I have one question. Do you guys feel that it's a significant difference, though, going from 2 of any age to 1 under 23 local boy? Do you think that really makes a significant difference?
I really think it makes a lot of difference. I think, especially with Albrechts. Albrechts, with their players, they should have more quality this season, right? And with that one player, they can change a game. And so I think as neutrals now, for me especially now as a neutral, I would want the league to be more competitive. And this rule change will definitely aid and help us achieving that objective.
Then what does it mean for the local boys
I don't
in
know.
the
Yeah,
Albrechts team?
this is where I'm coming from. So my thought is, what is the objective of Albrechts in Singapore, right? If they were to be a totally foreign team, I think they might as well have everybody foreign. But if they are here and they are taking a bit of grant money and subsidy money, I think there should be a allocation of more local players, right? I am for the fact that the quality of Albrechts will be better this year, right? But having said that, also we know that Albrechts will always bring players about this level, right? But what does it mean by them being here, and what does it mean and how it can help our local football, right? So to me, it's okay. On one side, I see the flip side, the good side of this competition as it is at this point to make the whole league competitive for this year. But as a whole, right, we know that Albrechts is doing things for our local football. But by taking this out, what does it mean, right? So for me, I rather just open it, like have them the ability to sign as many local players as they want, and based on merit, right, a Japanese player can play or a local player can play, regardless of age or age and limitation. So we don't have to limit it. That's my point of view, right?
Fair enough. I think we go back to the point about merit and earning it on merit, right? Don't worry, we'll come back to Albrechts later on in the chat. I just want to move on to the next rule change, which is 9 players on the bench in the 2022 season with 5 subs allowed per team. Kide, coming to you first, why do you think there's been this change?
I think we are looking at more games and more game time for the players, and especially for teams like LCS.
You brought it up, not me.
They have LCS A and LCS B, right? And I think if both of them are out to compete, they are still going to be in the top 3, right? So they would want these players to be playing regularly, or as regularly as they can, just to help the national team in the future, maybe.
Yeah. Look, the obvious thing is that when you talk about the bench, there's not going to be foreigners on the bench. It's all local boys. Yeah. So whoever is coming on the 5 subs will definitely be local. So to me, if it improves the locals' game time, I think I'm all for it. I'm looking forward to see how teams use this rule, though. So for Sailors, I mean, you will see quality players coming off the bench, but I suspect some clubs, they might use it to their advantage in the sense of trying to time waste. This is something that we've seen in other leagues when they have these five subs rule.
And it's also at a disadvantage for teams who are not
stack as,
stack
yeah,
as
yeah.
LCS. So you can maybe they just have 2 or 3 players who can really change the game.
Will
So
all clubs be able to fill 9 subs? I'm not quite sure.
But then
They
again,
would
with
be
rule
able to,
changes, it's not going to fit everyone, right?
Yeah,
You got
yeah.
to do it for the league as a whole. You cannot say, will all 8 teams help? Will the rule change help all 8 teams, right? So you got to work it out that way. Moving on to the final change, there's 4 rounds of fixtures, and you touched on it there. There's going to be lots of football, right? 4 rounds of fixtures in the SPL. The Singapore Cup's returning. Rosh, you must be excited with this much football on the cards.
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to it. Certainly with what's been going on in the transfer window with the teams and how they're looking. 4 rounds. I think we spoke to Desmond recently, didn't we? And he said that they're aiming for 4 rounds, and I think that could be also be in mind. The decision making behind that could also be with what's going to happen with the pandemic and the situation around it. They might need to cut 1 round of matches off, and then at least they can play 3. So, I think all these considerations come into it, and that's part of the reason why they're looking at that. But that they've planned for 4 rounds, that they planned for, hopefully we get the cup competitions as well. I think players have not been playing enough matches competitively over the last few years. So I think, with them having lots more matches now, lots more opportunities, you talk about game time, you talk about different rounds and things like that. I think it's good in that sense. It's good in that sense. Will there be a bit of some worry that, I'm playing the same team over and over again among some of the players? For me, when I played all those years ago, 3 rounds and then playing the same guys in the cup competitions and things like that, at times as a player as well, it got a bit dull. So it's going to be another challenge, getting these guys motivated to play those 4 rounds of matches and play in the cup competitions as well. But I'm sure the guys are up for it.
One thing to note is the latest AFC club competition manual states that each club has to play 27 matches at least. Last season, we only had 1 club playing 21 matches. So this rule is also to fit in with the AFC licensing as well. So we cannot forget that because the other alternative is to have more clubs in the league, which is not something that's doable at the moment.
I think I wanted to mention that, but on another point also, I feel that if we were to go from last season, I felt that even with 3 rounds, it was quite tight on certain phases of the league. So the top 3 at certain point, it was, there wasn't a runaway leader, right? The top 3 was fighting in a way, and then the middle one, even the bottom 3 was also fighting. So I felt that okay, even if we have 4 rounds, it's not going to be too bad, right? It wouldn't get too dull. Right, and then hopefully with the excitement of Singapore Cup, then I think there's another round that brings a different element to our season. So hopefully, I'm excited that there's more games, but I hope it will be a very tight league as well.
Yeah, I think that's going to be key, right?
Yeah.
Because if you then have one team just kind of running away with it, then it makes it a little bit of a slog for the rest. There's still stuff to play for, like Champions League places, AFC Cup.
And always nice to have cup competition back because lesser teams can go on a run there and there's more for fans, lesser fans to look forward to, right? All right, guys, talking about excitement, this opening exchanges has really got me very excited. Now we're going to switch focus to teams individually, and we're going to do this in the order they finished last year, starting with the last place team first. So that kicks us off with the Young Lions, who of course have changed their head coach. Going into the 2022 season, Philip O has made way for Nazri Nasir. What do you make of that change in terms of Philip O? We know he champions trusting the process and playing in a certain way, as opposed to Nazri Nasir, who is slightly different. So how is that going to work out for the Young Lions?
Yeah, I think slightly different is an understatement. So I've had conversations with both coaches, and like you mentioned, Pipo is someone who always talks about development. He's someone who is fine with losing 3-0, 4-0 as long as his team sticks to the philosophy that he wants. Nazri is quite different in the sense where he wants results, and he feels like even for the AFF championships, he feels it's not a developmental stage, it's a results business. He wants his players to go out there and get the victory, because as a former pro, to him, it's important that you go out to matches and you win the games. I think this is something that he will instill into the squad. I think we're going to see a very different gameplay because the Young Lions that we know from last season, they matched even the likes of Albrechts and Sailors in terms of how they played. So whether they do it this time around by being a bit more rigid and defensive is something I expect. I'm not sure what the rest think.
I think with whatever you said, I think a bigger question mark is why do we have a team having 2 coaches with different philosophies, right? So to me, I think I'll just put it at that. That's a big question mark. But having said that, with Nazri on board, right? I know Philip is a good youth developmental coach, right? Nazri, when he also took the national team for some short stint in between, I felt that there's some solidity there, right? A desire to win, right? Which I think at under 23 you should already have. It's no longer developmental. So in that sense, I think they will do much better than last year. Yeah? And not discounting the work that Philip has done. Right, and the maturity of the players over the past year.
Nasri will somehow build upon whatever Philip has done over the last one season. I don't think it's going to be a total change from what Philip has done. It's just going to be something that maybe there's going to be games where it's going to be a little bit tighter, a bit more compact, just to grind out the results. They also have a few players coming in, but they lost Hami and Mamat, right?
Yeah.
So they have Harith coming in, and they had Zikos
coming in. Yeah.
So Harith will be a good addition. Zikos, I don't think is going to be featuring that much because of the players playing in his position. But I think they're going to be quite surprising team this year.
Shah Shahiran, Arshad Shamim, Jordan, Jared. They are players who will kick on this year as well, no?
Yeah, definitely. I think they have been training for quite some time together. They have gone, now they are in Cambodia to play. So with these players coming in and the new additions as well, I really think that they're going to surprise us with a few good results this year.
Okay, you mentioned they might do better than last year. Few surprise results. Rosh, coming to you, what then constitutes to the Young Lions' success? Just not finishing bottom of the table, is it?
I mean, that would be good for a start, right? That's got to be like the main aim. But look, I mean, it's good to hear that Nasri is talking about, wanting to win matches. Again, it comes down to, and I remember sitting with you guys at the end of the season last year, we were talking about Young Lions, and some of them, and they were getting like rave reviews. So I said, look, it's a professional league, and they're the bottom of the league, and you can't. I understand the development aspect of it, but at the same time, we have to sort of say, at the same time, you need to, part of development is learning how to win, and you need to be able to win at this professional level. So I think that aspect of it has to come in this season, and that's what I'm looking forward to seeing. Obviously, finishing off the bottom of the table is going to be a start. But it'll be really interesting to see how they get on against some of these senior sides, and if they can finish above a couple of them, I think that would actually be.
I think there'll be alarm bells for the clubs. They finish above, to be fair. Yeah.
And I think if there were clubs out there in the league who will look at that and think, Young Lions have finished above us, it would be embarrassing for a fully professional club. They can sign foreign players, a fully professional club, not having issues with national service, not having issues with players not coming for training and school and this, that, and the other. Finishing below the Young Lions. That's question marks. There were alarm bells have got to start ringing.
One difficulty though the Young Lions have this season is of course the Asian Games, or if they go to Asian
disruption,
Games,
right?
It might be stop-start for them.
Stop-start for them, and then I think they're also playing fixtures back to back because they need to get the fixtures out of the way before they go for SEA Games. And we've seen how Tampines have suffered from flying back and then playing consecutive games. So on a young squad, and especially I think Roshan just touched on how they could sometimes be missing because of school, NS. I get Kide's point about how they could surprise, but because of that, I think anything other than a last place finish will be a major shock for me. Yeah.
I like Kide's point about possibly Nasri coming in to build on what Philip has laid the foundations for, right? Because we talk about instilling that culture and then moving on under a coach who will bring in that winning mentality. But it is alarming if they're playing so many different competitions and it'll be stop-start. All right, guys, let's move on to the next team who finished 7th last year. Plenty has changed at Balestier Khalsa since Marco led them to that 7th place. I say led them to that 7th place finish, but finished 7 with them. Akbar Nawaz has come in as a coaching change. I think it was announced towards the tail end of last year, and he's had the whole pre-season. Deepan, I'll come to you first on this. Balestier Khalsa, are they a brand new Balestier under Akbar?
Definitely a brand new Balestier in terms of playing style. I think that's first and foremost what everybody's looking forward to. But I just want to dampen expectations a bit. I know it's a bit of a downer here, but you look at something like Balestier Khalsa where so many new players have come in and a new coach has come in to instill a new philosophy. It's going to take time. I mean, just for example, I think Akbar, when he went over to India and he instilled that philosophy, I think the first game he lost 7-2 or 6-2 in a professional league. And I think the crowd, the chairman at the time, I think Akbar shared with me, were all on his case. And this could be the case here as well, where fans might think, you said new players, new philosophy, what's the point if we lose 4-0, 5-0? And some coaches will feel that way as well. So I think here is where patience is needed, not just from the club chairman, but also from fans to realize that Balestier will insist on playing the football that Akbar wants them to. And I'm talking about passing out from the back. They could concede silly goals.
Yes,
They
yes,
could
yes.
concede goals that Mothership will be sharing, a few weeks later. But they need to keep at it. I think they need to keep the faith, trust the process. Famous words we've heard last season. As long as they do that, I think they'll be fine. But I think this season is, I wouldn't say a write-off, but more like a learning season for them where they really get used to Akbar's football.
Okay, then in terms of recruitment, do you think Balestier as a club have done enough to give Akbar the tools to paint the picture, if that makes sense? Khairul, do you think recruitment-wise they've done all right?
I think for Balestier, there's still a lot of constraints that they work with. I think the club has grown 200, 300%, right, in terms of their media, marketing and everything. And so the expectations of everyone, the eyes of everyone is on the club, right? But I think they are still working on a very modest budget, right? I think where they are, they're trying to get the process right, where they get the head coach first, right? And then after that, they will build slowly. So I think at the start, if this was a long-term program that they think that they want to build on, I think they're on the right track, right, in terms of recruitment, right? But of course, we would expect within the 1 or 2 years, right, the players have to be better. They also need to attract players. At this point in time, maybe Akbar can attract players. The fact that they are changing their marketing angles can attract players. But Balestier has still a negative image to it since the last 10, 15 years. But of course, now with Adidas and Jeep, it looks better. But I think they are on the right track. So growth also needs to be, growth and consolidate. They cannot just get all the best players right at the start and then everything you cannot manage, right? So that's where we see on some other clubs. So I think at this stage, yes, right, and expectations must be managed. Objectives must also be achieved, and I think they'll be on the right
And
track.
sorry, speaking of dampening expectations, I think people will be excited because 2 players that are joining them, of course, impressed last season for Elbrex, Kuraba Kondo and Taniguchi. They looked good, but it's not always the case where players from Elbrex come into local sides and perform the way they used to. So again, it's something where we really got to wait and see in terms of how they perform. And I think a key factor to how well they do this season will actually be their striker, Hoshino, who has been used to not being around the box over the last few years. He's been used more as a knock-on striker almost. I think Akbar needs to get him in the box, retrain him almost to be that predator in the box that we know. So I think in 2018 he scored 19 or 20 goals.
And he's a predator in the box. He does everything. He volleys,
so as a
he
coach, I'm
heads,
not sure whether it's easy to do that, to retrain someone who has been so used to being outside the box.
I think it's okay for him. I think he has that natural ability and natural instinct. So for him to be there, give him a few games, I think he will start.
I don't think there'll be much retraining for
Yeah,
him, right?
for-
I mean,
yeah.
he naturally,
He's
in fact, it
naturally
was
like that,
probably
yeah.
like more difficult to retrain him to be like that
playing
support.
in amateur.
In all
Yeah.
likelihood, he just stepped aside for Sime Zuzul to do it, and then now that
Nah.
Zuzul has moved on, he will take on that mental. You all touched on it there, the need for patience, right? If Balestier are fully aware, as all of us are in this room, that they are embarking on a project, then Akbar doesn't have to worry so much, right? Surely he will be afforded time, right?
I don't know, man. For me, I think for just to focus on the players this season, I don't think the squad is good enough. I don't think the squad is good enough. The first 11 is good enough to sustain a match. If you look at the central midfield position, you don't really have good quality players over there.
Probably Amirul and Gareth and
probably
Adil
Amirul.
Johari.
But
the
what
under
is
23.
the, like when you say good, what's the expectation do you think you have of them? Like where do you think they should be with the squad that they have?
These guys are stealing
In
my
terms
questions,
of
guys.
league position,
Yeah, league position.
bottom 2, I think.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay,
I
okay.
think throughout, their squad is not strong enough. Their squad is not, they don't have enough quality and quantity as well. So to last 4 rounds, to play a different way, to play a different type of football is difficult. Yeah. So
I would disagree because I hope, not just because Akbar is a client of mine, but of course, I think that this team has a different element, which is a team spirit that will be built on across the season. Yeah, because I think at any team, right, the problem, if it goes up or down, is the team spirit. And this team spirit element that's created, the environment amongst the technical team and then the lower team. I mean, you have been in a team where the team spirit at every level is a problem.
We'll
right?
come there, we'll reach
So,
there, guys.
yeah.
Please, hold your horses.
when you lose games, it's going to be difficult. Right? No matter how strong your team is.
Sorry, just I have to touch on this. Kide, you were there before,
Yeah.
and you tried to also play a brand new style
yeah.
of football compared to what was
Yeah.
in place. And it's not that you had the time there as well. I think they also were quite impatient in terms of that. So I think we've seen it happen before, and they have not given the head coach time. So it might be a repeat.
I think Akbar will be given time, right? Because it's going to be more longer term project in a way, right? But at the same time, also to be realistic with the squad that he has, I really think that it's gonna be difficult for him.
But Akbar managed to get the team that he wanted to work with in terms of the technical team. So Azmi was already there, planted in, but he did another re-evaluation. Then Razif is there, and then Rory is there. So these are the people that he worked with. As for him, when he was there, he was given whoever was already there, right? Yeah. So I guess you don't just invest on the head coach and his technical team, and just 6 months down the road, hey, your program is not working. We're gonna get the previous head coach again, right? So it's not gonna happen. I don't think so.
Ross, you're smirking over there. Something's on your mind.
No, I just am laughing because I'm thinking to myself, new style of football, Toa Payoh Stadium. I want to see how that.
Someone jersey like Stoke.
Yeah, we have to address the jersey as well as the playing surface, right?
I mean,
If that's not
I
the
mean, Toa Payoh Stadium is a very difficult place to play.
They made an effort on the field, but I think the lower soil, the top soil, is already condemned soil.
It has been condemned for like.
So now
20
it's
years.
back to square one again.
I mean, that's the thing I want to see lah. We talk about how you pass out from the back on the pitch, the thing is going to boom boom boom.
But
boom,
if
boom.
there's someone who is able to do it, I think it's Akbar, because in Chennai, the feel is as bad as
I guess so. Yeah.
Okay, he's got a track record of it. Okay, valid point. Alright, guys.
I mean, this is not a criticism of Akbar or the playing style or whatever. Actually, it's just a genuine curiosity as to how this style will work on that pitch. Yeah.
And just very quickly, we heard from Kide, his prediction is bottom 2, right? I just need a quick prediction from all of you of where you think Balestier are going to end up this season.
I think they actually have the foreigners there, like Kondo and Taniguchi. Taniguchi, I'm a big fan of, by the way. I think he should have been the SPL Young Player of the Year last season. Kondo is excellent with the ball. If they can keep these guys fit and somehow find a way to get them to perform at the levels that they were at with Albirex, I feel like 5th, 6th might be possible.
They're going to score a lot, I think.
Yeah, you think it's at the other end. You know what? Defensively, where they had the issue for me last season was you had Amir and Bruno, right?
Yeah.
Okay, 2 young sort of centre backs. And then I noticed teams always attack down their left-hand side. With Ahmad Shahir there and all that. So, I mean,
I think it's a different thing because Bruno and Amir are 2 defenders who plays in a low block.
Yeah. So you think this is going to be now? They're going to start with a higher block.
They're going to get exposed. Yeah. And then they don't have enough quality in the 2 midfield areas to protect these 2.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see.
I think at the end it will even out because the fact that Akbar wants attackers as foreigners, so it immediately sorts of guarantees goals, right?
Score more than the opposition.
A bit more than that. So. And I mean, if you all have been listening, Akbar is a student and he learned a bit of the Pep philosophy, right? So, but he has also not been naive in that sense. He understood, because the conversations that I had, he understood the problems that Balestier might have with this squad. So I think he has done things to counter and mitigate this. So I think there's going to be something exciting, right? A bit of, not say solidity, but I think he's going to mitigate the fact that they're weaker behind, but they're going to score goals with Jumbo and Taniguchi and hopefully Kondo.
I take your point. Foreigners are going to guarantee you goals up front, but if he's trying to play it out of the back, then you need quality defenders as well to do that, right? Does he have the tools to do that?
It's a tough question.
You
look at it last
Did you hear about the friendly game? I mean, we cannot read into friendly games at this point, pre-season. But Balestier had a 0-0 game with Lion City. So I think that speaks some volume, right? Possessive.
Wait, wasn't there a game where they lost 8-0 to Albirex or something?
That was an under 20.
Okay.
No. With
was that?
Albirex. 6-0 also.
So this is what you mean. We cannot read into.
I think at the end of the day, it really boils down to how they are going to defend. And you talk about this low block or high block thing. At the end of the day, I think individuals play a big role no matter what system that you use. You look at Amir, you look at Bruno. To me, I'm going to be very honest. You cannot have a boy as young as Amir Hakim.
But they have Delvinder, no? They signed
Yes,
Delvinder.
if he plays, if they play a back three, but you cannot have a player like Amir being better than your foreigner, which is the case at Balestier. To me, Bruno doesn't cut it for me. And I think this could be the problem for Balestier in this season. You look at a lot of this individual defending that we saw last season. For Marco's system, in a low block, Bruno works. From what I've seen in friendlies, as well as in trainings even, I don't think this is going to work for them, and this could be their setback. But predictions-wise, I do see them scoring enough to finish in 5th.
Okay. So
Same.
we've
5th, 6th.
5th, 6th, bottom two.
Bottom two.
Okay, that's Balestier Khalsa. Moving on next to Geylang International. No coach change over there, surprisingly, but still he stays, no Ali. But they've changed a lot of their playing staff. There's been even running jokes about them doing straight swaps with Balestier Khalsa and stuff like that. But for a coach, come to you first. For a coach, when you're ripped off your... Has to be you. When your whole team is ripped out and then you have to essentially start from ground zero with... I feel like the only players I recall staying there is Zaiful, their keeper, and Abdel from last season.
Faizal Ruslan.
Faisal Roslan. So, apart from that, everything has changed. How big a task does Noor Ali have in 2022?
I think first of all, you don't announce to the public in the media that you're going to challenge for the title, lah.
Okay.
You know, with that squad. Let's manage expectations. Let's understand that it is going to be a rebuilding process again, right? And although some of the players have been playing together for some time, Huzaifa, Hazwan, Zuzul, Fadli.
Whether it was at Balestier or
They
play together.
Right, they've been playing together, right? So there's some familiarity over there, but at the same time, to play how Noor wants to play is a different thing altogether. And I think Noor wants to play how he wants to play. It doesn't matter whether it doesn't matter the players that he has, the quality of the players that he has. Yeah, so it's going to be an uphill task for him also.
You talk about that wholesale Balestier players who have played together but very different style, right? So Noor Ali is going to take a long while to convince them to play his way. Then how is that going to affect the team if at some point they realize it's not working? Rosh, coming to you, do you think there might be a flashpoint where he doesn't have the players anymore to play in his way?
Flashpoint, because last season also they had Flashpoint, right? So, I mean, Flashpoint and all that comes down to how he handles the dressing room, what kind of characters he has over there, and how they get along in those situations. I don't know. I'm on the outside, and again, I don't want to speculate what's going on behind the scenes. These guys might know better than me, or probably will know better than me. But in terms of convincing players, I don't know, man. Hide, you think you need to convince players to play your way, or you think you just say this is what I want you to do?
Convincing
Yeah,
players.
I don't think it's like convincing, right? It's whether they
can
they
do
can
it
or not.
right?
Yeah, I don't think it's like
and I don't think the current squad can play the way he wants to play.
okay.
Right? They don't have the ability yet, maybe. Right, so I mean, Zulu is a counter-attacking striker.
Yeah.
I don't think he's any good with how no wants to build up, how no wants to play the game for him. Right, so he scores a lot of goals in Balestier by counter-attacking, by the style of play.
Yeah.
But putting him in at where he is now, I don't think he's going to score that many. Right? Of course, if you put him 1v1 against defenders, he's just going to sprint past, burn past him and score. But how many times are you going to get that in a game, right? I think most of the time, Geylang is going to defend also.
Alright, so the hope is Sime Zuzul will recapture his Balestier form and hopefully bring it to Geylang International. But one thing that's caught my attention is the head coach, Noor Ali, has gone without an assistant coach for 2022, I understand. Kide, you obviously previously occupied that role. Why is that the case? Why has he opted not to have an assistant coach?
I think for Geylang, it has always been the technical staff from the youth department doubling up to help him. So those who are in the youth development position, the head of youth development position will double up as an assistant, which is a tough task because heading a youth department is there's a lot of things to do, and once you are helping Noor Ali, he's also asking you to do a lot of stuff, so it's really difficult. But I think from 2017-18 there hasn't been any proper assistant helping him for the club, and I know that he has been asking for one for a long time, but it hadn't been given to him since then.
Yeah. It's interesting to note how that will work out in terms of backroom staff. One team that has made a lot of backroom staff changes going into the new year is Tanjong Pagar. They brought in Indra Shadan as a striking coach, as well as I think Mohammad Ridwan has moved on to be a youth coach in their team. Deepan, I haven't heard from you from a while, so I'll come to you. Tanjong Pagar United, how are you feeling about them going into the new year?
I'm not very excited. I think you look at the foreign signings. It's not signings that really excite you. I think in terms of what they have held on from last season, of course Blake is still there. I think it's about working with what they have at the moment. I don't think their budget is the greatest. You can see that from the signings that they've made, even local signings wise. I don't see them doing well this season at all. I'll be very, very, very surprised. I do see them ending in the bottom two positions, possibly with Young Lions. Really, really, it depends on how their strike force actually goes this season. They've got Karul Nizam this season, and we know his record of injuries hasn't been great. Can they help him throughout the season? It's going to be a surprise if he does. Around him, you look at the midfield, Blake. A lot was said about him last season. We saw what he did with Brunei DPMM. But I don't think he was played in his best position. I think he played too deep for my liking. Not sure what the others think, but I'll be surprised if Tanjong Pagar do well this season.
Yeah, you touched on it there, the strike force. They let someone like Luis Junior go, and then they are looking to replace him with Khairul Nizam, who has shown talent, but is he your talisman striker who you need? I'm not convinced that he is. Looking at beyond their signings as well, the foreign signings haven't exactly caught the imagination, right? I mean, Blake was supposed to go, and then now they've re-signed him. Khairul, maybe you can touch on it there. What's going on with the recruitment at Tanjong Pagar?
I tried to myself to offer my services, but I think I
play
don't.
or what? Play or
Ask that, but I thought better not.
I could show up the defense with Shakir. Yeah, but I don't know if it's exactly budgetary concerns. I think there are some funds available at the club. Yeah, I think there are people at the background who actually can help with that in the club. So, but it surprised me as well because there were options that we shared and we hope could have helped the league. But Rio was retained, Shodai was retained. I think there were some other players that was supposed to be there and not there. And then Blake came back. Sugic is there, right? So I think the recruitment processes at the club should be increased very much, especially at SPL level, because we do not have someone like a sporting director or someone who is actually looking at this, right, at all the processes. Because you can have a head coach, yes, you can have an assistant coach or team manager, but they're focused in the game every week, right, in the league, in and out. But they do not know about this player to track for 6 months or that player to track for 6 months to start getting connections with agents. And so these are the kind of things that we need, you see. Right, so yes, on a safe bet that most clubs are doing, Albirec signings, yeah, safe bet, right, no risk and everything. But when it comes to this level where we thought Tanjong Pagar from the first year, they had Luis Junior, they did quite a decent job with Jan Mota, right, and then they got Rio was okay, right, and then we thought that they would build on, but then it's not happening. So I guess there's a lot of got to say with recruitment. Right? Maybe there's some sentimental element where you want to have Nizam over there. And I myself have personally, I've tried to get Nizam on board with many clubs when he had to leave Geylang. But I hope he can do well because the club is not taking any strikers, right? So all in all, I feel that they should increase their recruitment and scouting. Right, because that's the key. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have 4 good players, you're going to be lacking in the league.
Yeah. You're losing ground to the rest of the teams, right? Especially I look at their defense as well. Shakir is going to be out for the remainder of the season. They've signed a 44-year-old Daniel Bennett to provide cover in defense. We can talk all day about the recruitment of Daniel Bennett and Tanjong Pagar, but I just want to move on to Daniel Bennett's previous club, Tampines Rovers, who last season probably ended the season on a whimper. I mean, they had an important result that swung the title LCS's way, but Tampines Rovers were not the Tampines Rovers we expect them to be. Rosh, I'll come to you first on this. Tampines Rovers 2022, can we expect Gavin Ball to return?
I will hope so. I think so. I think Gavin's a really good coach. From what I've seen, I quite like what he's doing there. I think you can see a very clear identity with the team. There's a clear structure in terms of the style of play. He knows what he wants out of them. And again, I love technical players, and I think they have a few of those, especially in the midfield positions. The likes of Nakamura, a big fan of his. Even Memedovic in those areas. I think those are going to be some of the key players for them in terms of, you talk about this Gavin Ball thing and playing that style. I hope they do better. I hope they do well because I think the league needs more teams like that the league needs more competitiveness. And so I look at Tampines, I look at Lexa Hougang, and I hope they can really push, the Albirex and Line City Sailors this season.
We talked about it there, some of the new signings, right? Shuya Yamashita is someone who's come in. They've, of course, tried to revamp their back. We've seen Madhu leave the club, as well as Daniel Bennett leave for Tanjong Pagar. Bayaki as well has since taken up a job at FAS, right? So there seems to be a revamp job going in the defence. When you talk about Gavin Ball, you talk about playing out from the back. How difficult is it going to be, Kide, for these new players to come in and adapt very quickly to Gavin Ball?
I think the new Japanese defender is good enough, technically good enough, and smart enough to carry out the instructions being given out by Gavin, to play the way that Gavin wants to play. But at the same time, also you will lose a lot of experience, right? With Daniel Bennett gone, with Madhu gone, with Bai gone, you lose a lot of experience. And with Ryan Sanizal as a partner, it's gonna take some time to adjust to each other, and at the same time, language barrier might be a problem as well. So we have quite an inexperienced back four, except for Wancha. I think Irfan Najib should be starting at right back. And with the way that he wants to play, they're going to play a very high line. So it needs a little bit more time, but at the same time, the quality of the midfield and also up front will somehow manage to compensate for that. So again, they're going to do quite well. I think they're going to finish maybe about the same as this last season, or maybe a bit better. But I'm hoping for Gavin to return with positive squad, positive result, and also positive performance.
Actually, you talk about revamp, though. I actually beg to differ. I think they have one thing that other clubs don't, which is continuity from last season. Actually, bulk of their squad remains. And I think this is what Gavin wanted as well, where you look around the squad. I mean, besides the defense, I think midfield and attack, it's more or less the same players. They have, of course, got rid of Armin Boschnak, but they have got in someone good in defense. And if you've been at Jurong East Stadium to watch Albrecht, Shuya Yamashita is actually one of the most vocal defenders in the league. Can he translate that to, of course, a different environment at Tampines? That's a worry for me. But I actually see Tampines doing really well this season because of the continuity. I think in midfield and in attack, I think they've got the bulk of the squad there. I think the defense will be much better than last season. I think a lot of the reason why they conceded the goals was because they persisted with a high line despite having defenders who could not really adapt to that. So I think we can expect an improved Tampines this season.
And on that point about continuity, I think Tampines has caught the headlines because they've been giving out 5-year contracts to at least 3 players. Off the top of my head, they gave out 5-year contracts to 3 players. Khairul, I want to come to you on this. In terms of players getting these long-term contracts, you are obviously involved in discussions like that, not with these players per se, but what does that signal for the rest of the league?
There's a lot of positive news on the back of these 5-year signings. Yeah? But on the other hand, for me as an agent and a manager of players, I think also working with clubs as well, I think a 5-year contract is a bit too long, especially in our local context. Right? Of course, they were young players. They are young players and with time to develop. But I think a good gauge of time is about 3 years, where the player matures, and at that point also where the player can actually ask for a bigger contract and stuff. So for 5 years, I do not know exactly what the terms of their contract is, whether there's a 40% increment every year, and that's fine, you see. But on the whole, I say if we were to talk about 5, and then we don't know the details, I think it's more of a marketing stunt, in my opinion. Right? I think for players also, you need to be advised whether you want to be committed for 5 years, regardless there's an overseas clause or no. Right? Or maybe it's just an opportunistic platform where the club say, okay, let's try to get transfer fees from Lion City Sailors, you know. So that's where I think, you know, where it stands.
But on that point about transfer fees for players, clubs are fully entitled to do that, right? If they want to tie down their players, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is, but they expect a fee from Lion City Sailors, who are clearly not scared to splash the cash. Why not splash on a local talent, right?
Yeah, that's fine. But I would think also, right, it has to be a win-win for all parties, right? And if you lock someone in, okay, 3 years, 5 years, right? The win-win has to come with the player and for the club also. So like I said, I do not know what exactly is the terms of the contracts, especially for 5 years. I would say if somebody was to lock for 5 years, I say every year you increase 30%. Then it's fair. I will commit to you, right? But
I wouldn't want to negotiate with Khairul, by the way.
yeah, right. So to me that's fair. But if not, I think it's just an opportunistic move in this climate now, knowing that LCS has taken Shadan and Amirul, and that's where I see it.
Yeah, that's completely understandable. I think when we caught up with Desmond as well, he mentioned that every club, either you have money or you have time. It's either one of those drivers, right? I think he said, and Tampines are
if we
going
were,
down the
were
time
to
route.
put it, if let's say, if the club thinks about the player, and what if a foreign club now comes in? Would you release the player? Yes, he would release the player, right? And it's for the player. He would put it at the player. But if let's say Line City comes in now, would you do it for the player? No, definitely not, right? You will stay away 5 years. You give me your transfer fee. So I think there's 5 years is too long. I think 3 years is the best term for both. A win-win, a proper win-win for both.
So any players listening or watching, if you want any career advice, Khairul Ashraf, your guy, man. Very quickly, seems to be fairly positive, I guess, apart from the question marks over 5-year contract. Seems to be fairly positive looking for Tampines going into 2022. What are we expecting by the way of predictions? Rosh, I'll start with you.
Sure, I mean, surely top 4.
Yeah.
I mean, surely top 4. Whether it's third or fourth, I think it's difficult really to say, because I think Hougang have got a really good squad as well. I would probably say Tampines fourth again, but I hope for no collapses.
Closer.
More of like a fight.
top 4 fight.
And top 4
consistent.
fight. Yeah, and
Fourth
consistent.
and a cup run perhaps?
And no like collapses in a cup run, yeah.
So all in agreement, Tampines fourth. Anybody? Hold your say if not. Okay, all agree that Tampines are finishing fourth. Moving on swiftly to the next team who have done well in the transfer market. I would think Hogan United have caught the eye with a couple of interesting signings. Deepan, why not you get us started? What do you think about Hogan going into 2022? They have Coach of the Year, Clement Teo, in charge.
Yeah,
Raymond Ball?
yeah. I like Hougang's squad. You look at midfield in particular. I think they've got a variety of options. You've got Bite in the form of not Suarez, but Fabian and Afiq. They've got the bite in there. Or if you want to play more dynamic players, you've got Kaishu, you've got Amir Zailani who can come in as well. Or technical players, you've got Zulfami who they just signed. You can even put someone like Kaishu in there to play the technical side of the game. And I think I like that about Hougang United, the fact that they can use this variety of options up front as well. You've got Amy, you've got Shawal. And of course, there's been murmurs on the ground that Hougang have signed a technical player in Andre Moritz, former Crystal Palace, Brazilian. Not from the ground, I've been hearing, putting my ears to the ground. But I think it will be a good signing for Hougang United if that transpires. I'm not sure what's the makeup of the squad then. But so many things to be excited for Hougang United. And I think one thing to take note of is, of course, they've got a new assistant coach, a Japanese from Albrechts, who of course also helped with the national team. So I heard that he was someone who was in charge of set-piece training at Albrechts. And Albrecht scored plenty of set-piece goals last season. And even our national team, I heard that he dealt a lot with set-pieces. And we saw our national team at the Suzuki Cup. So could this be an area where Hougang really improves in? Because last season, there were no slouches at set-pieces as well. They scored a fair few goals from set-pieces. And they've got the likes of Lionel, Anders, even the new striker from Brazil. I think he's steady in the air as well. So lots of things to look forward to for Hougang United. I think from backroom to even the playing squad. Tremendous recruitment from Hougang.
Oh, Clement good, got 2 assistants.
You talk a lot about the foreigners putting a ear to the ground, about other foreigners. We'll wait for Deepan's Here We Go on Moritz arriving. But very quickly...
You got to come up with your own hashtag.
I was thinking about this today.
Open to suggestions.
Yeah.
So anyone
We'll
with
think of something,
local Singlish version of Here We Go, drop it in the comments and then maybe Deepan will consider it. Coming back to Hougang though. We talk a lot about the foreigners. One signing that got me excited is Amy Reka, because we saw him do really well last year. Eventually went on to the Suzuki Cup squad, which seems progression. Is he going to kick on in 2022, Rosh?
Amy? Yes, I think this is a very smart signing from Hougang. And I think it really fits with what they're trying to do. I think he's a player, again, who did incredibly well for Geylang last year in a difficult season. Again, like I said, it was when I heard about this, when there were rumours and when they were talking about it, I thought this
Put your ear to the ground as well.
Put my ear to the ground, and immediately it was like I thought this makes a lot of sense, and I expect him to do well there. And he seems to just be growing in confidence. I think he believes in himself a lot more now, and I think especially playing for Singapore. that has really sort of helped him sort of grow and develop. And I think it's a good sign for Hougang. I mean, I like the squad overall. Looking good.
Kide, coming to you, Hougang, one thing last year, they had a lot of eye-catching results, big results against bigger teams, but then end up dropping points against lesser teams. If you were in the coaching setup, how would you look to change that in 2022?
Again, I think I was thinking about this. I think the squad is capable of challenging the title, definitely. As a whole, the team, I think the recruitment process has been good. They have brought in players with the way that they want to play. And I think not many SPL clubs can say that, okay, this is how I want to play, and I'm going to get the players to come in and with the qualities that is needed to play the system. Okay, so consistency was the problem last year. They started out very well, then after that they fizzled out towards the last part of the season. It's something that we Clement, the two assistants should be looking into, and I think it starts every day with the messaging in training, right? Right, you have a chance now. I think the players know that they can feel that, okay, now we can have a good fight this season, and to always be on the toes, reminding each other that, hey, let's have a go this season. Don't slack off, even in training. Like it's going to be a quality training, right? It's not going to be like other squads where you're going to play against younger players, lesser quality players, right? So let's hope that they get the messaging right, they get the training right, they get the consistency right, and then I think Hougang is going to be somewhere up there fighting with LCS and Albrechts.
So I didn't do him justice, but the coach's name, Japanese coach, is Yuki Fujimoto. So he's the one that I was talking about from set pieces. Yeah.
Just very quickly, final point on Hougang. We talk a lot about them having a squad capable of competing in the SPL and all. They also have continental competition. I mean, COVID willing, they will compete in the AFC Cup. Is that going to help them?
I think that part is going to be interesting. How the loads and all that are managed if that happens, if the continental competition happens, because I actually like to see them really push in the AFC Cup, and because I think they have a squad capable of doing
and they
that.
can achieve,
when you look regionally, right, I think they have a squad capable of doing that.
It's comparable to the team that won, the Home United team that won.
I think so, and I agree with Hide in the sense that I think they should be in for a title challenge. That should be the aim. I really think that should be the aim. I know we're going to talk about them maybe finishing in the top 3 or whatever, but again, just like how I said, I hope Tampines really pushes. Hougang really really push LCS and Albrechts, because I think they have a squad capable of really, really properly challenging.
Continuity
dark
as
horse,
well.
I would say.
Yeah,
Continuity as well, as you mentioned. And it seems like it looks like they've learned in terms of the transfers, in terms of getting the support staff coming in as well. So I'm quite optimistic about Hougang and the chances this season.
Sorry, I just want to touch on one foreign signing that they made. I don't know what the panel thinks, but Kiki Krajcek is a player that we saw do well fleetingly for Balestier. Do you almost feel like now it'll be him unleashed at Hougang, because you're not really playing the Marco ball, right? You're playing a more expensive style. Do you feel Clement ball? Do you feel like Kiki Krajcek is someone who we can look forward to watching better football from this season?
From first-hand experience, I think he has a lot of ability. But at the same time, also, he has to adapt from 2 years or 3 years playing the same type of Marco ball, and I think now he needs to adapt to a totally different game. So I think that he's going to be good for Hougang, because he has all that energy, he has all that legs to run, to cover spaces, to do all that. But at the same time, he also can be up there in the box to finish. Right, so he's going. I mean, we call him all-action man. Right, he's there, he's up in your face, defending and all. But I think he's going to play a decent part of the season for Hougang, and I also think he's going to contribute quite a number of goals.
Yeah, I think tactically as well, how Hougang set up, I'm interested in looking at that, because last year was 4-4-2 and then mostly like a counter-attacking style of play, right? Whereas this year, I wonder what kind of changes they're going to make in terms of whether they still become a counter-attacking side, set up a little bit differently formation-wise and all that, or do they play out from the back, and in that
Maybe
that kind of
you're
sense.
going to be enjoying the games this year.
Yeah. Okay, man.
I think the panel has whet our appetite to watch Hougang in action. I think all of you are in agreement that they will finish at least top 3 and push the top 2
I hope
as
so.
much as possible. I think that's what
Top
we are
two,
all hoping for.
Top two
for
me.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of top 2, we're moving on to the 2 teams that finished in the top 2 last year. We have to start with the runners-up, Albrechts Niigata. We touched on it earlier, the rule change. But moving on to that, Albrechts are a team who essentially revamp their whole squad every year. and they've done the same this year. Deepan, you've managed to watch some of these players firsthand. Can you tell me what you've found out from the ground?
From the ground. I've looked at their squad in terms of the friendlies that they've played. My personal opinion is I think this squad is much better than last season. I think we're going to see a real Albrechts this time around. Not just because the head coach has returned. Of course, Yoshinaga has come back to manage the club.
I think he's a big plus point.
Big plus point, exactly. I completely agree. I look at one of the players that they have. Of course, all the headlines will be grabbed by Tadanari Lee.
Yeah.
Of course, a former Japan international. But they've got a player in midfield, a number 10. He is wearing a number 10 jersey. Kobayashi is his name. And he's a former Japan under-18 player. So comes with good pedigree as well. So I'm looking forward to how he links up with Tadanari Lee. And in terms of their local...
Did you watch him play?
Yeah, I watched him play in
Similar to Kyoga?
not similar to Kyoga. This guy is someone who is going to be a bit more upfront because for Kyoga, he started the season with Albrechts quite
On the
upfront.
10, yeah.
On the 10, but as he came towards the end of the season, came back a bit. But I think Kobayashi will be a bona fide number 10. I think he will help them as well. They also have another under 18 Japanese player as well who's playing on the wings. I don't really remember his name at the moment, but he wears number 8 jersey. I think he's someone to look at as well. So of course with Albrechts, most seasons, we know more about them as the season goes on, then we get to realize who the real players are. But one negative thing I've got to talk about is a player that I really enjoyed over the last 2 seasons was, of course, the right back, Hashioka. I think this time around, the main player for them in defense will be on the other side, the left back. He's been good, and he's wearing the number 5 jersey that Hashioka wore last 2 seasons. He's someone to look forward to as well. So yeah, plenty to look forward to from Albrechts. I expect them to be much stronger than last season for sure.
You touched on all the new recruits there. I'm keen to zoom in on Yoshinaga, the return of Yoshinaga almost, right? Are we surprised that Albrechts have gone back that way, or is it the only way forward if LCS are going to be such a big challenge?
I'm not surprised. I think they were really hurt by losing the title last season. I think we've seen them react with force. If you know, Nippon is talking about, Kyle's talking about the squads and all that looking really strong this year. Looking to also match up, bringing Tadanari Lee into that in terms of, marquee signing in that sense. Never mind that he hasn't scored in 2 years, playing in Japan for Kyoto Sanga. So I'm actually interested to see how I'll come back to your point, but I'm actually interested to see how he does here. He's 36, 37.
36,
And I know he's a big name with great experience, his play and all that. How does he do on like a thin Jurong East stadium pitch where you can hear boom, 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 boom all the time, constant training, how they manage him to throughout the season. So I'm actually fascinated about how that experiment works out for Albrechts. As for King Kazu coming back, I think again, no surprise. And he looks like a coach who's got real stature.
Yeah.
And
He has a presence.
He has a
an
presence.
aura about
He's
him.
got a great haircut now as well. I mean, that doesn't hurt,
Where's his haircut from? You know?
I don't know, but maybe we can talk to him someday.
I heard like a samurai.
So I think he's got that seriousness, that arrogance about him to want to push the team forward. I don't think he's the kind, and I know I've talked to him on a few occasions last season as well. Where Albrechts scored a last-minute equalizer and some of the players were celebrating. He said, "This is not the way.
I
shouldn't be the
recall he
way.
brought up this.
Take the ball, go back again. Even though it's like only like 10 seconds left or whatever, you cannot celebrate 1 point and a draw." So I think he will really sort of instill this kind of mentality into the players. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone else.
I agree perfectly with you.
I think with Albrechts, as for previous seasons, they will only get better throughout the season. As they get together, they know each other. Then, the training program is more delivered in such a way. I think they will get better. So towards the first part of the season, they are going to test themselves first to see how they match against the others. But after a while, I think they are just going to focus on themselves and then try to, match LCS.
Sorry, the under 18 Japanese player that I talked about, I actually have his name written down, so I should say it. Sujita Masahiro. He's actually the number 7, who's the other under 18 Japanese player. So 2 players to look forward to along with Tadanari.
I want to come back to that title charge, which will be a big part of the conversation when we talk about Lion City Sailors. But just very quickly, we touched on it there, the under 23 rule changing for just one Singaporean, right? In terms of their squad, Khairul, who do you think is the Singaporean that is going to take that chance or be given that chance almost?
I'm hearing of a very good big player who's coming in. Yeah, after national service. So
Are you going to tell us who? Or?
I'm hearing it's Ilhan.
Okay,
yeah?
okay.
Yeah. So if he's the one, and I'm quite excited because you know what Albirex did for Adam Swandi, right? Or Yuan and a few others, right? In fact,
Nicky Melvin
Nicky,
Singh,
yeah,
yeah.
Nicky also.
Yeah,
For
Nicky
me, I
Melvin
felt
Singh.
like, yeah, quite impressive in the last year, right? So I feel that if it's that one slot and Ilhan gets it, okay, good. Right, it will improve the player. It will also improve the team, I think, and he will get more game time. But I hope also that it's not always a 45 minutes thing, and then the player goes out, which we have seen in many cases as well. Right. So in that sense, I feel these are the local players, Nicky and Ilhan. Right. Or if not, if they can't give 45 minutes to 90 minutes to one player, maybe they can give 45 and then get Nicky to replace him, and then we still get two players in that setup playing. So hopefully that's how they move.
And we possibly look at Tadinarili at 36. He's not going to play 90 minutes week in, week out
Yeah,
either,
exactly.
right? There will
The
be younger
management
players.
of his loads and all that is going to be interesting. If this Ilhan move comes off, I think it's such a smart move for him.
For him, yeah.
For him, such a good move. Like, you know, I think it really, instead of going to like another club or whatever, or even LCS, for example, and you sit on the bench and all that, you know, and just be part of a star-studded squad. But to go to Albirex and not just play, but day in, day out, that level of training, you know, learning that discipline and being and having that
mentality,
that pressure and that mentality. And not just that, I think longer term as well. I'm sure with young players, they will have some plans about potentially, you know, if you develop well with us, we push you overseas, go for trials, go for this. And they have connections, right? Albirex has connections with their parent club, with other clubs, with sponsors and with things like that. So there are lots of opportunities here for young local talent, and especially a player of Ilhan's quality, you know, very exciting move if that happens.
My final question on Albirex will be, last year, towards the end of the season, it almost seemed like it was Albirex against the rest of Singapore. Everyone was rooting for that Singaporean team to win, right? Because a Singaporean team hadn't won in so long. But going this year, there might be a lot of people who are jumping off that bandwagon and like, you know, Lion City Sailors are a bit like Man City, so people want to jump off that bandwagon. Can Albirex almost expect more local support in that way? Because they're clearly doing a lot for the local community.
I mean, from the conversations I've had with some of the local football fraternity people, it seems like they like you said, they want Albirex to challenge Sailors and win Sailors this season, because I think a lot of people saw the power that Sailors have, and you know, they can recruit any local player that they want. Basically, we saw that with Izwan. I mean, nobody would have expected Izwan to accept a move to go and challenge Hassan Sani for the spot, but there he is now. So I think there will be a lot more support for Albirex, like you mentioned. But one thing is, Albirex don't forget. So I was speaking to a particular Albirex player, and he said, we will not forget how towards the end of last season, everybody was rooting for Sailors. It was all of them against us. This is something they will go into the season with, which is why I expect them to be really, really hungry for the title.
So must be a Singaporean player who told you, because the English was articulate.
I can speak Japanese.
Judging by the way you were giving me the names, I doubt so. All right, then moving on to the reigning champions, Lion City Sailors. Khairul, I have to come to you first on this, purely because of the signings they've made and how much headlines they have grabbed. All I can say is, wow, we never thought a Singapore club will be making waves like this, right? What do you make of their new signings, and how much work was it to get some of those deals over the line?
I think the work done has been extensive. Yeah, I think over November and over the Christmas period, the people involved, that means the analysts, GM, the task is to sign players. Even for myself, we had a lot of late nights, right? So I think in that sense, the work that is done is really extensive, very, very detailed as well, right? So when they look into a player, it's not just the statistics of the last 5 months or 4 months. It's also the last 3 seasons. Right, so that's why there were some players that took longer than it should, because it is not just about, I think for generally in this region, when you go into to get players, because there's no transfer fee, you track those who are tracking players, you track players who know that the contracts are expiring. But sometimes because you don't have that luxury of contact, because you need to be on these players for a period of time, you need to be tracking. If not, towards the end of the season, whoever is free, then you try to get, and then through network you just call. So that is the processes of the clubs that are here, right? But for Lion City is different. They already have a statistics team that look into the statistics,
Yeah.
and then they have their coaches. The coaches also do their own analysis whether it fits into the game model as well, right? And then for us also, the ones that we propose are very specific in terms of age, in terms of left foot, in terms of goal scoring statistics and everything. So I can say that that's why I was a bit critical at Tanjong Pagar just now, because on one side, yes, you have a club with resources
Yep.
to do this, but at the same time, you also have a club like Hogan who doesn't really have the resources of Lion City, but they are still getting players who are decent.
Of a certain caliber.
Of a certain caliber,
yeah.
right? Yeah. So if you stay on the league and retain players that are of lesser quality, then it's a problem. So for me, Lion City has done everything they should and they could within to get the players that they have. Yeah. And in fact, when they went to Dortmund, they were validated by their processes, because that's almost how they did it over there as well.
Yeah. That's fabulous to hear, right? That a club like Dortmund is validating the Lion City model almost. Kide, I just want to come to you. We talk a lot about these signings that Lion City Sailors have made. It's not just the foreigners. They've signed 2 national team players in Izwan and Anu as well. But there's the school of thought that they are stockpiling players, that there's too big a squad almost. As a former head coach yourself, how do you manage game time amongst that many players?
We have 4 rounds.
Okay.
We have Singapore Cup, we have AFC Champions League. At the end of the day, the players must know the objective is to win.
There was
to win
also
everything.
an idea of the ASEAN Championship before it was. So there was also a consideration.
Yeah. So I would think that you got to fight for your spot. Right? It doesn't matter whether you are a national player or you're starting in the national team. You still have to fight for your spot. So to me, it's like 2 quality teams, 2 quality sets of teams playing against each other every time they train.
Okay.
Right? So I know I can pick and choose whatever I want. Right? It's really up to the advantage of the coach. So if your players are not happy, you can go. But who wants to go, right?
Of course.
Right? The more money they are getting, the stuff that they're getting, the resources, the support they are getting over there. So you just have to fight for your spot and get on with it, because that's what a professional footballer should be doing.
I mean, when you say like that, then they essentially have 2 first 11s, right? And that's a luxury to have. Rosh, coming to you, ACL competition on the horizon for Lion City Sailors.
Yeah.
Are they equipped enough on paper? They look well equipped to at least give a good account of themselves?
Yeah. You see, this is the thing with AFC Champions League, right? A lot of focus is on the for sides that are from this region. Even you see JDT, they struggle in the AFC Champions League. They really do. And when they had to play playoffs events against the Thai teams, they will lose to the Thai teams. They can't compete until they got the automatic spot in there. And even then, for them to win matches is very difficult. Very, very difficult. The level is completely different. You might have really good 4 foreigners, the 3+1 or whatever the rules are going to be next year and moving forward. Your local contingent is going to make a difference. Because if you have 4 foreigners, you're still 7, right? If my math is not failing me. 11. So those 7.
Depends who the referee.
So 7, that 7 is very important. And even when you see Korean teams, Japanese teams, they play in that competition, they don't need foreigners. They can play all local teams and they can
locals
go
are
very
better
far.
than the foreigners.
The locals are better than the foreign players.
The foreigners in the LCS are the same level, or almost the same level as the local players from.
Correct.
Yeah.
From
Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
But our local players, are we at that level where I know there's a lot of excitement, and yes, we have I say we because they're a Singaporean club, but LCS have built a squad of the best local players, right? And the best foreign players they can possibly find. But really, going to Champions League football is a
totally different.
completely different level. It's not even like one level. It's like 2 or 3 different levels. And for me, and I've spoken to national players as well, and I've spoken to them about this. I say, which do you think is a high level competition? International football for Singapore or playing the AFC Champions League? And some of them tell me it's AFC Champions League. AFC Champions League is a higher level. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be a challenge. I want to try and dampen expectations a little bit. I think they're certainly going to do better than Tampines. Because if they're better equipped to do that. They simply cannot lose. Because then it would be a failure for me in that sense. But I think still finding a win is still difficult. If they are able to come out from their first campaign with a win, I think that's something to hang on to.
Just to bring it back to the local league though, they are going to compete in the AFC Champions League, and that will mean they spend some time away from playing local football. Does that then give the onus to Albrechts? Because it's going to be Albrechts and Lion City Sailors fighting for it. So does LCS taking part in AFC Champions League almost give Albrechts an upper hand?
Upper hand wise, I think I have to agree. I think you will see some form of advantage for Albrechts. But I think LCS are better equipped to deal with that than Tampines were last season. I think you talk about these two first 11 almost. I think we'll see a lot of rotation this season. A lot of players that we didn't see last season from Sailors, we might see. I think we talked about Amiruddin a bit earlier on. One of those players that I hope gets game time. We talked about Anaki Ismit, who did well with Tanjong Pagar last season. So I think we're going to see a variety of players used at Sailors. I think the coach that they have, Sailors, he would know how to rotate best. He has worked with stellar squads before, so it's not new to him. So I think, yes, there will be advantage to answer your question, but I don't think it will be massive. I think Sailors will still deal with it quite well.
And how excited are we by this Korean coach leading the Lion City Sailors, and obviously a Japanese coach at the helm of Albrechts going head to head? You think mind games will play a part at some point?
I think it doesn't matter whether it's a local coach or Japanese coach. I think with two teams challenging for the title, it's always going to be mind games. There's always going to be one of them trying to find an advantage or the edge over the other. Right? So again, it's going to be interesting. But again, I don't want to rule out Hogan. Guys, I think Clement will play mind games as well. Right? So let's see what's in store.
You talk about the Korean versus Japanese element. I think where it will come to the fore is between the two frontmen. Shinwook and Tadanari
Also,
Lee.
That's what I was talking about. No, I'm kidding.
I think whoever ends up as top scorer will come from the team that actually wins the title. I think these two guys will be focal to how both teams end up this season.
All right, gentlemen, then that just leaves me with one last question. Who wins the title? Khairul first.
Lion City Sailors.
Oh, I mean, it has to be, right? They have to win everything. They have to win everything. If they don't win, it's failure.
It's failure, yeah.
They have to win everything.
Not the Champions League.
No,
Singapore Cup.
Domestically.
Domestically, they have to
They have to clear.
They have to win everything,
yeah.
So you are backing Lion City Sailors. You think it'll be a failure if Lion City Sailors don't win it?
Yeah.
Who are
I'm
you
backing
backing?
them.
Same. It's LCS.
I completely
But I
agree.
just want a closer
Not a great
competition.
conversation I'm having with everybody.
No, I mean to be very honest, you look at the resources that Lion City Sailors have. I don't think it's a hot take to say that if they don't win, it's a failure. It has to be. That is the reality, because when you're spending this much of money, you have this much of resources, you've got to win a league. We cannot forget that. I mean, we've been sitting here talking up Albrechts, but there are a bunch of Japanese university players.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
That is the
Exactly
reality,
that.
and we got to accept that, and the Sailors have to accept that. They have to adopt this pressure and realize that anything other than winning everything on the line,
Every game.
winning every game is failure.
And do you think they'll be run as close by Albrechts as they were in 2021? Or
Hope so.
I hope so.
from a neutral perspective,
Yeah.
you certainly
Sorry,
hope
more
so?
than Albrechts, I want Hougang to run them close.
Okay.
I hope we see a 3-horse race.
Yeah, yeah.
That's something that I want to see.
At least for the main part of the
At least
season.
for 3 rounds. Let's have it that way.
Gentlemen, it's been fabulous chatting with all of you, setting the scene for the 2022 Singapore Premier League season. I think you guys have offered some fabulous insight into the inner workings, what to look forward to, and just putting your ear to the ground and finding out information. We hope you viewers and listeners have enjoyed it as much as we have. Keep the conversation going in the comments below and continue to support The Final Whistle. We'll continue to bring you good content all season long. Thank you so much.